So these are the five personalities of Shiva, and you are all these multiple personalities. You are all these multiple personalities, the self, aspects, faces, you see? And this is in terms of spiritual kind of dialogue, like in terms of spiritual unfoldment, this is where that dynamic will be will shift, you know, that, so that we have another perspective of on ignorance. Ignorance doesn't exist. There is no ignorance. There's no ignorance per se. It is simply a misperception. Misperception. Oh, ignorance is another word for misperception. Tell me, is misperception exists?
No.
Yes.
No, because this is very important now. It's important not to be sluggish about it. Does misperception exist or not? I misperceive something. I misperceive. Does it exist or not? Misperception is misperception. Something that does not exist is taken as real. Something that does not have a reality beneath itself other than the luminosity of your own hood. So that what is being misperceived is called as avidya, but it does not exist. Only if you want to position it properly, only state of enlightenment exists. Enlightenment is real. Ignorance is not. Why it takes toll on our physiology, this whole awakening? Because the condition is very dense, it's strong. When something, the system has been identified for a long time, for it to relax fully, it has to go through some processes. And unless that happens, there will be none of that self-relaxation. Something has to happen. How it will happen, each to their own. Whatever nervous system can take at the time. But if someone thinks that it will come from simple understanding, that's what I tell you, you are deluding yourself. And at some point I decided to talk about the direct path, and I want to make it very clear, because this direct path now is the in thing. The in thing. Teachers are made into celebrities by certain crowds because they are in, they're talking the in talk. Direct path is on everyone's lips who goes to science and duality, to many other conferences, because the direct path is like, we don't get involved with all this, you know. We want to do it at lunch, you know. Like menu, chit-chat, white, red, yes please. You know, guess what, yesterday. Direct path, I'm already enlightened, you know, I'm just getting on. Munching my steak with blood. So, while according to this perspective, these half-baked teachers keep multiplying like flies. So, well, because each cow dies, evolution is cut, short. Remember I talked about it? Who remembers? Okay. We'll talk about it at other times. Don't want to spoil your appetite. But I do want to talk about this direct path again a little bit here, so that yes, there is direct path. There is a direct path of Jnana, where the refinement of thought is required to such degree. And what is thought? It's a movement of prana. We already know that. There's no such thing as thinking or mind. It's a frequency of prana, quality of prana. The refinement reaches a degree where prana, awakened, can travel very fast and extremely subtly through the medium channel and unite in the higher cortexes, at least in the place known as Sadashiva, from where the camp can be built and one can then refine that further. So yes, there is this enlightenment, this self-realization, but it is still taken by Shakti, by pranic quality. I yet to meet one person in my life who is qualified for that path. Not that there are no clear thinking, refined thinkers around. Of course they are. But it's kind of a different quality we're talking about here. And this path of the Jnani is indeed there. But it still goes through this, what often we could call ordeal of awakening of our latent power as Kundalini. It is that Kundalini no longer gets through the elementary order of the chakras anymore. It doesn't need to. It storms, as it were, the highest realm, because refinement already is there. You see, this is the direct path explained through the perspective of spiritual anatomy. Not the direct path of attending this satsang, and the teacher tells you, you're already that, and we spoke about that as well here. And it sounds very good, it's liberating, and people like, Friday night could have gone to a horror movie, instead went to the satsang. Of course it's better. Coming out and feels better. And then in California, in Bay Area, it's lovely. So you come out, you wow, free. Feel free, Kind of feel liberated. That's it, that guy or that girl, really, definitely. Because I feel that, and the thought takes over, you see? And the mind claims that. And the neuroplasticity of the brain. You can feel whatever you want to feel. You walk around, mood making. We don't want to do that because we want to enjoy the bliss, we want to enjoy Ananda, we want to be in that relaxed state. And then, in those of you in whom that refinement is given, invoked, possible, then it will take just like that. It will take that. It will be like that. Very subtle. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It will happen to some of you. But in my experience, to steadfast this work, the aptitude of Shakti is needed. Because this can only happen when the nervous system doesn't hold on to anything. Do you understand what direct path is? There's nothing in the system that prevents the system to vibrate. We cannot separate nervous system and mind, the way of the mind working. They're like this. They're like this. They're inseparable. They're inseparable. The refinement and clarity of thought can only come from being in that relaxed state. So it's rather vice versa. It's rather the other way around. But direct path exists. Of course it exists, has always existed and will always exist. For the select few. Not that we are inferior because we cannot essentially ascend in that very silent elevator where nothing happens. No even windows to look out, to report how beautiful it was. It's not one of those round capsule-like, when you go up through the gardens and fountains and birds chirping and what have you in the city. It's not those elevators. It's like a kind of like a soothing light and maybe a little hum there, nothing else. Barely enough just to take you there, but you don't even feel the movement probably. It's a smooth. That's a direct path. But it's not on the level of thought, not on the level of thinking. It's still prana moves through sushumna. So this have to be essentially understood. So we don't somehow lost in this kind of speculations that you can crack that nut somehow. And I want to add to that, misinterpretation is also plays a tremendous part here. Misrepresentation. For example, people love quoting Ramana Maharshi. But Ramana Maharshi had awakening at an early age and trembled with that Shakti and was soaked in it, wet, all the time. And yet he spoke of the self-inquiry, kind of on the outside, very clinical, very Advaita Vedanta dialogue. And people get confused. They only see that what is being reproduced from quote to quote, from teacher to teacher. More than that, when Sri Aurobindo, on being acquainted with the work of Ramana Maharshi, he said, finally, the end of the lower path. And that was misinterpreted as the awakening of Shakti. He never spoke about the end of the lower path with that in view. But people took that. What he meant is the end of the lower path, where the yogis try to poke the serpent, hitting the serpent with a metal rod. Scriptural line. That's what in many yogic practices is done. It's forcibly awakened, by holding the breath, holding this, holding that. That's what Sri Aurobindo said, the end of the lower path. But he constantly spoke of that descent of grace and ascent of Shakti. And the descent of grace is inseparable part of this process. So we kind of drifted, as I said, we allow ourselves to drift from where we've started. Fivefold faces. And we're positioned, that along that trajectory of ascend and descend. So the qualities, you see? The qualities. So the quality of that Purusha would be here, the ether, remember? The ether, and this is the domain of space, sound. And it is where it is associated with Vishuddhi chakra. And it is here where all elements are projected from. All elements find their origin in the ether, in the space element, ether. From ether, everything comes into being, because this where the sound progressively gets denser, and the elemental order is born. See? Therefore, we could say that the very Maya of Shiva is born from there. There is even that. But at the same time, Shiva as awareness, as your own awareness. I'm just weaving here that myth of Nilakantha, where Shiva, in order to filter Soma from the ocean where it was essentially spilled again, so to filter it again, he drinks the whole creation, right? To filter the Soma, and holds all the poison in his throat, and his throat gets blue. So Nilakantha is blue throat, blue-throated. Shiva has a blue throat because he holds all the poison of creation so it doesn't seep down to the elementary order, you see? And there are various interpretations, of course. It's that it is from there that poison of Maya is a possibility, but not higher up. But the readings could be many. I prefer the reading is that as your awareness, it is never soiled. Your awareness is never impeded. It's impeccable. But this kind of thing, just like, it's like play with Maya, it does it, And there you go. Contracted, contracted. I didn't even try, it's happened by itself. Did you see that? I was like, talking about magic, and then we do it again. So it's a bit like that. It's a new trick I learned here at this retreat. See, talking about experiences.